Welcome to Follow Jesus, Lesson 7. Today, we talk about strength. So what is it when someone who's following Jesus, who's giving themselves to the process, find it's just not working? They're not experiencing the growth, the community, the sense of mission that they should be finding in Jesus. What's up? Well, growth, community, and mission are important, but ultimately what they need is strength. When the first three aren't working, and I say this as a pastor who focused his ministry around these four aspects of discipleship. If there's no growth, community, or mission, something's up. Something is undermining the process. And ultimately, what they need is for other people to come into their life and be strong with them and for them and help them connect with the strength that we all find in Jesus. Years ago, when I was in high school, I was on the wrestling team, and wrestling was probably my favorite sport. And my least favorite way of finishing practice was when the coach would say, okay, everybody on their back, and you have all these wrestlers, all spread out on a huge wrestling mat, and they say, okay, do a leg lift, and it was always it has to be 6 to 8 inches off the ground, not more, not less. It's got to be right there. And everybody would have to hold that leg lift until somebody gave in. Now, as soon as that one person gave in, everybody else got to go home. But for that one person, they had to go run laps. They had to do other things in addition to all the workout that they've just done. What was the point of that exercise? The point was strength. The coach wanted to see who was strong and who would last and who would give in. Now, it's not just physical strength he was looking for. It was mental strength. It was, do you have the focus? Do you have the intention internally? Do you have the strength internally to not let your legs down and not be the first one? Well, in Jesus, our walk of faith is very much the same way. It is about being strong in the Lord, but not just on the outside. It's about being strong on the inside. Be strong and courageous, all of you who put your hope in the Lord. This isn't optional. This isn't something for just a few. If we're going to, back in the day, if you were going to be on that wrestling team, you had to be strong. Today, if we're following Jesus, you have to be strong. You have to be courageous. It's important for all of us. And if you're not going to find yourself being productive in the other areas of your discipleship. For I long to visit you so I can bring you some spiritual gift that will help you grow strong in the Lord. Paul's implying here that the reason God has given us spiritual gifts is not for ourselves, but so we can help other people be strong in the Lord. That was what drove him to do all the things he did, and that's what should be driving us. I pray that from his glorious, unlimited resources, he will empower you with inner strength and keep you strong. Paul knew that if we were going to flourish in Jesus, we needed to be strong. But there's times, we all go through seasons where we're weak, we are undermined in some way, shape, or form in our life, and we need other believers to come along and help us be strong in the moment. Now, where is the strength? It's in the Lord. It's in all the resources that he has for us that we find this inner strength and this reality of strength in our life. So, my dear brothers and sisters, be strong and immovable. Paul was talking about the fact that we have victory over sin. All the brokenness of our life, we can overcome it in Jesus. And as a result, the conclusion is, so we should be strong in the Lord. Life pattern 43. Jesus was always a part of the solution and never part of the problem. Growing up, my dad said we have a decision to make. Are we going to be part of the problem or part of the solution? He didn't give a third option. You're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. Where are you going to fall out? Well, as a kid, I grew up believing it's important that we are all part of the solution and we're not making things worse. We're not part of the problem. Well, Jesus was always a part of the solution, and he was never a part of the problem. One day, Jesus cast out a demon from a man who couldn't speak. And when the demon was gone, the man began to speak. The crowds were amazed, but some of them said, well, no wonder he can cast out demons. He gets his power from Satan, the prince of demons. In this situation, there was a problem. This man couldn't speak. And it wasn't a physiological thing, it was a spiritual thing. And Jesus came to be the solution. He cast out the demon, and the man could speak, problem solved, and everybody lived happily ever after. No, there's always somebody that's trying to undermine the work of God. And in this case, the crowds were amazed, but some of them saw Jesus not as the solution to the problem, but as the problem himself. As followers of Jesus, we're going to have that same dynamic in our lives. There's going to be some who try to tear down what we are able to do in Jesus. But the reality is, Jesus was always the solution and never part of the problem. But I have pleaded in prayer for you, Simon, that your faith should not fail. But when you have repented and turned to me again, strengthen your brothers. Peter denied Jesus. Peter messed up. He fell way short. And in that, Jesus said, and I'm going to pray for you. Prayer is incredibly important in finding the strength of the Lord. Jesus is praying for Peter, but then he says, when you're done, I want you to go out now and do what I'm doing. I want you to strengthen others in the Lord. Prayer is critical to finding the strength we need in Jesus. Life pattern 44. Jesus was always strong for himself. Nope, that's not what it says. Jesus was always strong for the weak and never for his own glory. So many people, we're strong because we want life to go well for us. We increase our strength for our own good. When in Jesus, it's the exact opposite. Jesus was strong, and he took that strength and he used it to benefit those who were weak. Jesus said of the religious leaders of his day, how they loved the seats of honor in the synagogues and the head table at banquets. Yet they shamelessly cheat widows out of their property, and they pretend to be pious by making long prayers in public. Because of this, they will be more severely punished. Jesus grew up the son of a single mom, who I'm sure was taken advantage of in that culture. That is very predictable. And as a result, he had a special place in his heart for protecting those who were disadvantaged. And what just really got to him was these religious leaders that should know better. They love positions of strength, and yet they use it for their own good, and they use it to put down those who are weak. Jesus said, as a result, they will be harshly judged. Learn to do good, seek justice, help the oppressed, defend the cause of orphans, fight for the rights of widows. Isaiah was clear as he spoke for God. We have a responsibility as the people of God to be strong for the weak. Jesus answered, if I want glory for myself, it doesn't count. Unlike us, we like to be strong so that people think we're great, for our own glory. Jesus said, if I'm in this just for my own glory, it's all worthless. It just doesn't count. Jesus was strong, and he was strong for us in our weakness. Life pattern number 45. Jesus was always unshakable and never double-minded. Often our strength is undermined by the fact that we can be shaken, that we are not completely focused the way we should be. Now, this goes back to week 1 and all the things that Jesus showed us that help us be more focused. But for Jesus, he was always unshakable and never double-minded. Don't be afraid, he said. Take courage. I am here. Jesus is out on a boat with his disciples, and they're scared spitless. There's a huge storm, and a chunk of them are fishermen, and they've been on the water a lot, and they know this is a bad situation. Jesus uses that as a metaphor for following him. As we follow Jesus, we're going to experience storms. We're going to experience things that look really bad. It looks really threatening. But what does he say? He says, be strong because I am here. Our strength comes from our focus on Jesus and not on our circumstances. As we focus on the broken things in life, we can be overwhelmed. But as we focus on Jesus, we find strength in the storm. James says, be sure that your faith is in God alone. Do not waver, for a person with divided loyalty is as unsettled as a wave of the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. Such people should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Their loyalty is divided between God and the world. They are unstable in everything they do. James grew up watching Jesus. As his younger brother, James saw that Jesus was unshakable, that Jesus was single-minded in the Lord. So later, years later, now that James is one of the primary leaders in the New Testament church, he's just saying, this is the way we need to live our lives. We need to live our lives like my brother Jesus. And we need to be unshakable by being single-minded. When we are double-minded, when we're going off in multiple directions, it takes our strength, it strips our strength from us. But in Jesus, we can be single-minded. Life pattern number 46. Jesus was always unshockable and never easily offended. For those of us that are following Jesus, we cannot allow offense to strip us of our strength. Offense is a luxury we cannot afford. An offended friend is harder to win back than a fortified city. Offense shuts us down, and a person who's offended in his friendship may lose that friendship forever, and it is hard to win that friendship back. Jesus is talking with his disciples. He's talking about how they need to focus on him, that he is the bread of life. This is John chapter 6. And what happens is his teaching is so strong, it offends people. Now, he's just being straight with them. He's saying you have to be able to give yourself fully and completely to me. He said, I am the bread of life, and you need to consume that bread. And many of his disciples were offended. So then he turns to his 12 and asks them, does this offend you? If it had, what would have happened? They would have left Jesus. They would have broken fellowship with Jesus, and they would have lost their source of strength. Jesus was not easily offended. We need to live our lives the same way. When we are easily offended, it will undermine our ability to be strong for others. Why is it that being offended is something that comes so quickly to people who see themselves as super spiritual? Super spiritual people are always spewing this, I'm offended by this, I'm offended by that. When sinners act like sinners, super spiritual people, and I put that in quotes because they're not really super spiritual, they just think they are. They're easily offended by the sin of others. Imagine how many opportunities would have been missed if Jesus was easily offended. Here's just a few. Just then, his disciples came back. They were shocked to find him talking to this Samaritan woman. Now, her life was shocking. Her life was a mess. And they were shocked that he was talking to a Samaritan, a woman, and a messed up Samaritan woman. All of it was shocking to them. And yet, if Jesus had been shocked, that village wouldn't have come to faith. As a result of Jesus seeing the openness in her heart, her life is transformed, and so is the life of many people in that village. Then Jesus stood up and said to the woman, where are your accusers? Didn't even one of them condemn you? This is the woman at the well. There is a whole group of men that are offended by this woman's lifestyle. And yet Jesus saw her heart. And Jesus encourages her to go and sin no more. I mean, he's not just letting her off the hook, but he wasn't offended by the fact that sinners act like sinners. And finally, Jesus said to Zacchaeus, quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today. Everyone was offended by tax collectors. They were traitors to their people. They were, well, let's put it, we don't like tax collectors either, but in that day, they were particularly evil people. And yet Jesus isn't offended by the fact that Zacchaeus is a tax collector. He goes to his home, which is a site of intimacy, and that day salvation comes to that household because Jesus was not easily offended. Life pattern number 47. Jesus always walked in authority and never to manipulate or control people. Jesus knew his position of strength. It was the authority that he had in God. And the same should be true of us. We should walk in our position of strength. We should walk in the authority that we have, but never for our own good. It's to be strong for the weak. It's not to be strong for ourselves. And Jesus never did that. He never misused his authority the way so many people do. But Jesus called them together and said, "You know the rulers of this world lord it over their people, and officials flaunt their authority over those under them. But among you, it will be different. Whoever wants to be a leader among you must be your servant." So, was Jesus controlling? He was in control. I mean, he demonstrated that again and again and again, that he was in control. But when you're in control, you don't have to be controlling. When you walk in your position of strength, you don't have to be controlling of other people. Jesus said, that's not the way we do this. People that don't know God, people that aren't doing it God's way, use their authority to lord it over people. Jesus said, we live among people. We are an example to them. And as we lead them, we do what's best for them. We are strong for those who need us to be strong for them. Jesus didn't use his authority to be controlling or manipulative. Peter said, "Don't lord it over the people assigned to your care, but lead them by your own good example." Why do you think people today have such an aversion to authority? I mean, has it always been that way, or is this something unique to us? I grew up in the 60s as a kid, and everything was about being anti-authority. And so the world I've grown up in has always pushed back on authority. And as a pastor for 4.5 decades, this was one of the major issues in church. People either were afraid of authority and wouldn't step into their position of strength, or they wanted to misuse it to manipulate and control other people. Both of those are wrong. In Jesus, we don't live our life that way. But our authority builds you up. It doesn't tear you down. So I will not be ashamed of using my authority. Paul said, hey, this was an issue in his day as well. But he knows that the problem people have with authority is when it's misused. Paul says, I have authority to build up and not tear down. So I'm not going to misuse it. I'm going to use my authority, my position of strength in God, to build other people up, to be strong for the weak. Life pattern number 48. Jesus always strengthened others and never meddled in their business. He never took it too far. He was there to not only be strong for the weak, but to strengthen them. But sometimes we go too far with that. We go to the point where we start meddling in other people's decisions. Jesus never did that. Then someone called from the crowd, "Teacher, please tell my brother to divide our father's estate with me." Jesus replied, "Friend, who made me a judge over you to decide such things as that?" Some people who are weak want others to be strong for them. Jesus was strong for the weak, but he also was at work strengthening those who were weak. In this case, this man wanted Jesus to make his decision for him. There was a hard decision to make, and he wanted Jesus to do it. And Jesus said, it's not why I'm here. I'm not here to do your job for you. I'm here to do my job, which is to be strong for you and make a way for you to be strong in me. If you suffer, however, it must not be for murder, stealing, making trouble, or prying into other people's affairs. Peter makes me chuckle here. We all know that, there's things that are evil, wicked, mean, bad, and nasty, and murder and things like that are part of it. But many of us don't think meddling in other people's business is a bad thing, where Peter says that's just as bad as these other things. Paul and Barnabas returned to Lystra, Iconium, Antioch, and Pisidia, where they strengthened the believers. In Acts, Paul and Barnabas are traveling and they're helping the lost to be found in Jesus. But then it stops and says, and not only are they helping the lost be found, but they're helping those who are found to be strong in the Lord. So what we do as followers of Jesus is to, help people see what they're not seeing. But then once they are in Jesus and they're seeing things clearly, helping them to remain strong. It's just part of what we do. Life pattern number 49. Jesus always found strength in adversity and never ran from a fight, quit, or burned out. In life, we go through what counselors used to call a tunnel of chaos. This tunnel of chaos is a season of time where you're going to go into a dark place and you don't know if you're going to come out on the other side or not. Well, the reality is, in life, if you go through enough tunnels of chaos, in the end, you realize, okay, God has been with me in the past. He will be with me again, and I can do this. Jesus found the same thing to be true as he lived his life in God. There's no bigger challenge to Jesus, no darker season than as he was approaching the cross. And this is what it says. He went on a little farther and bowed his face to the ground, praying, "My Father, if it is possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." In his most extreme tunnel of chaos, Jesus knew that the love that God had for him could be trusted. And though things looked very dark, and it's not what Jesus wanted, how could the author of life want to die? But what he wanted most was to do the will of the Father. As he entered that tunnel of chaos, he could trust God. He could be strong in God, even in this intense adversity. Well, the same thing is true for us. We go through seasons of adversity, and for Jesus, he always found strength in adversity because he trusted God in the chaos. And we can do the same if we turn to God. And in this case, it's very obvious. He's turning to God in prayer. I have told you this so that you may have peace in me. Here on earth you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart, because I have overcome the world. We find strength in adversity when we pray, and we find strength in adversity when we walk in partnership with Jesus. If we walk with Jesus through whatever the chaos is, we too can find strength in adversity. For who is powerful enough to enter the house of a strong man and plunder his goods? Only someone even stronger. Jesus is talking about the warfare that we experience in life as Satan, the enemy of our souls, is trying to overpower us. And the reality is, we win because we're stronger. Are we stronger by ourselves? No, we are stronger in Jesus. So prayer and partnership bring us together with Jesus in God, and we can overcome anything that Satan throws against us. Life pattern number 50. Jesus always lived as our example and never as the exception to the rule. Years ago, I had a youth pastor who really thought his newfound position of authority and responsibility meant he now was immune to the rules. He could get away with bending the rules for his own sake because of his position, when in reality the opposite is true. When we have a position of authority, it's that much more important that we live our life as an example, the way other people should be living their life, just like Jesus. And if we think we're the exception to the rule, we are only kidding ourselves. I have given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you. I tell you the truth. Slaves are not greater than their master, nor is the messenger more important than the one who sends the message. Now that you know these things, God will bless you for doing them. As we close up this series, take time to decide, what's your takeaway for today, but ultimately, what are your takeaways for this whole series, this whole Bible study? Hopefully you found something every week to focus on. And as you have, it has been a part of seeing your life transformed in Jesus. My prayer for you is that God will make you strong as you give yourself to Jesus, both internally, that you will have mental strength, you'll have internal strength, heart strength, as well as physical strength in the world to live the life that God has called you to live. Thank you for taking time to go through this study together. May God bless you in your future journey with Him.